Some people don't ask for help because they actually need it. They ask to see how much of you they can take. Have you ever noticed that the more you give, the less you are respected? This is one of the hardest truths to accept, especially if you are kind, capable, and reliable. Society teaches us that saying yes makes you good, generous, and strong. But Stoic philosophy teaches something colder and far more honest. Not everything that is asked of you should be given. Marcus Aurelius warned that if you are not careful, other people's priorities will quietly replace your own. Not through force or cruelty, but through polite requests, emotional pressure, and subtle guilt. Some requests are not innocent. They are tests of your boundaries, your self-respect, and your sense of worth. The danger is this: every time you give away what should have been protected, you train people how to treat you. Today, we will break down 5 things you should never give people, even if they ask nicely. Because boundaries are not selfish. They are the foundation of a calm, disciplined, and unbreakable life. 1. Your time on demand. Time is not just hours on a clock. Time is your life in its rawest form. Every minute you give away is a minute you will never recover. And yet, this is the first thing people feel entitled to ask for. Not aggressively, but casually and politely. As if your time exists by default for their needs. Can you hop on a quick call? Just one small favor. It'll only take a minute. These requests rarely sound dangerous. In fact, they sound reasonable. And that is exactly why they work. In modern life, people test boundaries through time. They start by interrupting you, assuming availability, and normalizing instant access. Over time, your schedule stops being yours. You become reactive instead of deliberate. From a Stoic perspective, this is a self-respect issue. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should not allow your mind to be pulled in every direction by external demands. Whoever controls your time eventually controls your focus, your energy, and your priorities. When you give your time on demand, you silently teach others that your life is flexible, but theirs is fixed. This is how resentment is born. A Stoic does not confuse kindness with availability. Being disciplined with your time does not make you selfish. It makes you sovereign. The key is not aggression, but pause. Before you respond, stop, breathe, and ask yourself, is this aligned with how I choose to live today? If the answer is no, a simple, calm boundary is enough. I can't right now. That doesn't work for me. I'll get back to you later. People who respect you will adjust. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will resist. There is a quiet power in choosing when and how you give your time. 2. Emotional labor for free. Not all exhaustion comes from work. Some of it comes from carrying emotions that were never yours to hold. Emotional labor is one of the most invisible things people take from you. It happens quietly through long conversations, repeated venting, and emotional dependence disguised as closeness. They don't ask, "Can I unload my emotional weight onto you?" Instead, they say, "Can I talk for a second? I just need someone who understands. You're the only one I can tell this to." At first, it feels like trust, but over time, a pattern emerges. They talk, you listen. They release, you absorb. And when it is your turn to speak, the space is gone. Stoicism draws a clear line here. You are responsible for your own inner state, not for managing the emotional chaos of others. If you constantly allow other people's anxiety, anger, and confusion to flood your inner world, you slowly lose clarity. This is where many strong, capable people get trapped. They mistake emotional endurance for virtue. But unbounded emotional availability often comes from an avoidance of saying no. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. But we also suffer by proximity. Pay attention to these signs. You feel drained after talking to them, not lighter. They rarely ask how you are. And when they do, they don't stay long. Their problems never evolve or resolve into action. You are allowed to limit emotional access. You can listen without absorbing. And you can support without sacrificing your stability. The Stoic response is measured adjustment. Shorter conversations, clear limits, and redirecting responsibility back to them. Sometimes that means saying, "I'm not in the right space for this right now." Those who rely on your emotional labor will often resist your boundaries, because your availability has become part of their coping system. When you change, the system breaks. But compassion without structure leads to burnout. Your calm, clarity, and emotional steadiness are not infinite resources. They are the result of discipline. 3. Access to your decisions. There is a subtle difference between asking out of concern and asking out of control. Some people don't want to help you decide. They want to be part of the decision, because influence feels like power. It usually starts softly. "Are you sure that's a good idea? I'm just worried about you. If it were me, I'd do it differently." Over time, the questions follow every choice you make. Your career, your relationships, your lifestyle. Slowly, your decisions become group discussions. And you start seeking permission instead of clarity. Stoicism dictates that other people do not live with the consequences of your choices. Only you do. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that no one else could think, choose, or act on his behalf. Delegating your decisions, even emotionally, is a form of self-abandonment. When you give people access to your decisions, you give them access to your direction. Many people ask questions to steer you toward what makes them comfortable, or what confirms their worldview. Notice the pattern. They question you more when you grow, and they advise more when your path doesn't resemble theirs. That is not guidance, that is friction with your independence. Seeking endless validation weakens judgment. The more you explain your decisions, the more you invite debate and shift authority away from yourself. A Stoic does not defend his life choices in court. This means choosing who gets access. Counsel comes from those who understand your values. Commentary comes from those who simply feel entitled to an opinion. One strengthens you, the other dilutes you. Epictetus taught that if you want to improve, you must be willing to appear foolish in the eyes of others. The Stoic response is calm and non-confrontational. You don't argue or overshare. You decide privately and move forward quietly. I've thought it through. This works for me. I'm comfortable with my choice. 4. Your silence in the face of disrespect. Silence can be powerful, but silence can also be permission. Many people misunderstand the Stoic value of calm and translate that into enduring everything quietly. They believe staying silent makes them mature and above the noise. Sometimes it does, but there is a dangerous kind of silence, born from fear, fear of conflict, or fear of making things awkward. When silence comes from fear, it erodes dignity. Disrespect rarely arrives loudly. It shows up as jokes that go a little too far. Passive-aggressive remarks or sarcasm disguised as humor. Because it is subtle, you hesitate and let it slide. That hesitation is the opening. When you stay silent in the face of repeated disrespect, you are teaching people how to treat you. Disrespect thrives on ambiguity. When nothing is said, the other person assumes acceptance. The Stoic solution is not explosive confrontation, but measured clarity. You don't need to raise your voice or insult. You need to name the behavior calmly and briefly. That comment wasn't necessary. I don't appreciate being spoken to that way. Let's keep this respectful. No lecture, no explanation, no emotional charge. This kind of response removes confusion and draws a clear line. Epictetus taught that we cannot control how others act, but we can control what we tolerate. Silence chosen from strength is strategic, but silence that allows disrespect to repeat is a surrender. And surrender always has a price. 5. Your authenticity for acceptance. The final thing you must never give away is your authenticity in exchange for acceptance. The desire to fit in and be liked is a powerful human instinct. But wearing a mask to please others is the ultimate betrayal of the self. People will often demand that you tone down your ambition, hide your true thoughts, or adopt their opinions, just to make them feel comfortable. They want you to fit into the box they have built for you. Stoicism teaches that your character and your truth are your only true possessions. If you trade your authenticity for the approval of a crowd, you become a slave to their whims. You trade long-term self-respect for short-term validation. When you stand firmly in your truth, you will naturally filter out the people who do not belong in your life. You don't need to conform to survive. You need to be integrated within yourself. Let your actions match your principles, and let your words reflect your mind. Your peace is not a favor you owe the world. It is a sanctuary you must defend. Protect these 5 areas, and watch how the world adjusts to your strength.